After a series of tests, my doctors have told me I have Alzheimer's. This is called early stage Alzheimer's. And they say the treatments I'm getting are keeping it at bay, at least for now. Tonight will be the last newscast I anchor.
Ever watch the news and feel a quiet sense of trust settle in because of the person delivering it? For millions of viewers across New York and beyond, that person was Bill Ritter. For over 2 decades, his voice carried the weight of breaking stories, city crises, and human moments with a calm authority that felt earned rather than performed. Then, on the evening of June 13, 2026, something shifted. The man who had reported on hurricanes, trials, and tragedy sat behind his own desk and became the story himself, delivering a farewell that left a city speechless. The making of a news anchor. New York trusted. William Sheldon Ritter was born on February 26, 1950, in Los Angeles, California, into a Jewish family whose values shaped his sense of fairness and civic responsibility from an early age. Growing up in Southern California during a period of social upheaval, Ritter developed an early awareness of injustice, activism, and the power of honest storytelling. Those instincts would guide every phase of a career that stretched across print, television, and investigative reporting before it landed him behind the most watched news desk in New York City. His academic journey began at San Diego State University in 1968, but it ended abruptly in 1972 when he was expelled just 1 semester short of graduation after leading protests against the Vietnam War. That decision cost him a degree, but said everything about who he was. Conviction mattered more than convenience. He would not complete his formal education until more than 4 decades later, when his daughter encouraged him to return to school, earning a degree from the New School in 2016 at the age of 66. Before television, Ritter built his foundation in print journalism. He worked as a reporter and then an editor for the San Diego Business Journal from 1980 to 1984, then moved to the San Diego County edition of the Los Angeles Times, where he served as business editor from 1984 to 1987. Those years gave him something that no television training could replicate: rigorous attention to sourcing, a commitment to verified facts, and a deep understanding of how business and power intersect in ways that affect ordinary people. The jump to television came in February 1987 when he joined KNSD-TV, the NBC affiliate in San Diego, as a business and investigative reporter. What followed across those 3 years was the kind of work that defined a career. His investigative reporting uncovered a safety scandal involving killer whales and their trainers at SeaWorld of California in 1987. And in 1989, he exposed a local stock fraud scheme that drew significant public attention. Both investigations earned him Emmy Awards, and he was named NBC Affiliate Reporter of the Year in both 1987 and 1988. By the time he left San Diego, he had collected 4 Emmys and a reputation as someone who pursued truth with discipline and purpose. Los Angeles came next. From 1990 to 1991, he worked as an investigative reporter for KTTV-TV, where his coverage expanded to national stories. He covered the Rodney King trial and the Los Angeles riots that followed the verdict in 1992, reporting on one of the most consequential civil unrest moments in modern American history. His calm and measured approach during those volatile weeks earned him respect inside and outside the newsroom. In 1993, Ritter joined ABC News as the founding co-host of Good Morning America Sunday, stepping into a national platform that broadened his reach considerably. By 1997, he had transitioned into a correspondent role for 2020, the long-running ABC News magazine program. That role allowed him to pursue the kind of long-form investigative storytelling he had always been drawn to. Then, in June 1998, he arrived at WABC-TV in New York, initially anchoring weekends while continuing his full-time work at ABC News during the week. The move that truly changed everything came in October 1999, when he took over the 11 p.m. news from the legendary Bill Ritter, succeeding a figure who had defined the slot for an era. In February 2001, he added the 6 p.m. broadcast to his responsibilities. New York welcomed him almost immediately, but what made his arrival remarkable had very little to do with ratings, fame, or the prestige of a major television market. The people who worked beside him saw something deeper. They described him in words that are rarely handed out lightly in the news business: a real newsman. Not someone who simply appeared on camera each evening to read headlines prepared by others, but someone who immersed himself in the reporting process, challenged assumptions, and constantly searched for ways to make every broadcast stronger. He was the kind of journalist who raised the standard without ever demanding attention for doing so. Viewers sensed that difference, even if they could not always put it into words. There was an authenticity behind the desk, a quiet credibility that made people trust what they were hearing. Over the years, that trust would carry him through some of the biggest stories of a generation. And what came next would cement his reputation as one of television journalism's most respected figures. Stay with me, because his most remarkable chapter is only beginning. 2 decades of landmark coverage and quiet excellence. The stories Bill Ritter covered at WABC were not small. Over his decades at Eyewitness News, he reported on events that marked the country and the city in ways that residents still carry. The death of Princess Diana, the aftermath of the Oklahoma City bombing, TWA Flight 800, the O.J. Simpson legal proceedings, the Central Park cases, and the kind of local New York stories that shape neighborhoods, policies, and lives. Each assignment was handled with the same measured precision that had defined his work since his San Diego days. What set Ritter apart from many of his peers was his sustained commitment to investigative journalism, even within the constraints of a daily broadcast schedule. Most evening news anchors settle into a presenter role over time, allowing the reporting to come from correspondents, while the anchor becomes the face and voice of delivery. Ritter never fully gave up the journalist identity. He remained a correspondent for 2020, alongside his anchoring duties, pursuing stories that demanded deeper reporting and longer timelines. His personal life during these years also reflected a man who invested seriously in his relationships. He married Kathleen Friery in 2008, and together they built a family alongside the 3 children Ritter has from his relationships. His children are named Mia, Owen, and Ella, and they appear across the public record as a source of pride and motivation. The story of his daughter encouraging him to finish college, eventually leading to a degree in 2016 at age 66, became a widely shared moment that revealed his character beyond the anchor desk. He also hosted Up Close on Sundays, a long-running program on WABC that focused on public affairs, politics, and community conversations. That show gave him a platform for the kind of substantive interview-driven journalism that rarely survives in commercial television environments. He kept it going for years, building relationships with public officials, activists, and community leaders across the region. In 2019, Ritter was named co-anchor of the 5 p.m. edition alongside Sadeh Badarinwa, building what became the longest-running 11 p.m. anchor team in Eyewitness News history. That record was not accidental. It reflected a stability, a shared professionalism, and a genuine connection between 2 anchors that viewers could sense. The long-running team became a source of institutional pride at the station. By the time Ritter turned 75 in February 2025, there were signs that adjustments were coming. He stepped back from the 11 p.m. news in March 2025, with Mike Marza stepping into that role. In June 2025, he stepped back from the 5 p.m. broadcast as well. He remained on the 6 p.m. news with Liz Cho. Each transition was framed publicly as a decision to spend more time with his family and grandchildren, and those reasons were genuine. But there was something else developing quietly behind the scenes. Something that would only become known to viewers on a Friday evening in June 2026. The years of landmark reporting, unforgettable broadcasts, and moments that helped define modern television news had done nothing to diminish his reputation. If anything, they had only strengthened it. As new generations of journalists walked through the newsroom doors, they encountered not merely a veteran anchor, but a living benchmark for what the profession could be. Colleagues who arrived decades after Bill Ritter first took his seat behind the desk often described him as a standard setter, the kind of journalist whose work ethic quietly challenged everyone around him to be better. He did not need to be the loudest voice in the room. His credibility spoke for him. In an era when news was becoming increasingly crowded with opinion, sensationalism, and endless competition for attention, Ritter represented something that seemed to be disappearing. He pursued facts carefully, treated stories with respect, and delivered information with a steadiness that viewers came to trust. Night after night, New Yorkers welcomed him into their homes without realizing how rare that consistency had become. That is why what happened next caught so many people off guard. Behind the calm demeanor, the familiar smile, and the reassuring presence that millions had relied on for years, a private battle was beginning to unfold. Keep watching to find out. The diagnosis that changed everything. On the evening of June 13, 2026, Bill Ritter delivered an announcement during the WABC 6 p.m. newscast that stopped viewers across New York and beyond. After a series of medical tests, his doctors had confirmed a diagnosis of early-stage Alzheimer's disease. The 76-year-old journalist, who had spent his career reporting on the lives and struggles of others, sat at the desk he had anchored for over 2 decades and told the truth about his own. The announcement carried weight that went beyond the professional. Ritter had lived with Alzheimer's as a family reality long before it became his personal one. His father died from the disease in June 1998, the same month he joined WABC. That timing, arriving at a new career chapter while mourning apparent loss to the same condition now facing him, gives his story a dimension that no scripted farewell could manufacture. He did not minimize the diagnosis. He described receiving it after a series of tests, acknowledged that current treatments were helping keep the disease at bay for the time being, and spoke plainly about the uncertainty that comes with a condition that has no cure. His words, delivered with the same calm authority he had used for decades to report on others, carried an emotional weight that moved colleagues, viewers, and the wider journalism community in ways that social media captured almost immediately. He also redirected credit from himself to the people around him. His children told him he was being brave. He pushed that back, saying the bravery belonged to them and to his wife, Kathleen. That deflection was not false modesty. It was the same precision with facts and truth he had always applied to his reporting, turned inward. He saw the situation clearly and described it clearly. General Manager Marilu Galvez responded with a statement that described Ritter as a defining presence at the station who had led New Yorkers through the stories that mattered most with exceptional insight, integrity, and heart. She confirmed that he would not be disappearing from the station entirely, noting that he would continue as part of the ABC7 family, sharing personal updates and providing resources for others affected by Alzheimer's disease. The reaction from the journalism community reflected the depth of respect Ritter had built over nearly 3 decades in New York. Colleagues posted messages across platforms describing him as a real newsman, a mentor, and someone who embodied what local television journalism should be. The contrast between his quiet professionalism and the increasingly loud and performative direction of modern broadcast media made his departure feel like the end of something specific and irreplaceable. Ritter himself closed his final broadcast with words that said everything about his guiding principles. He expressed that he would miss reporting the news with truth and facts, no matter where they fall, and described it as his honor to do exactly that. That phrase, "the truth and the facts, no matter where they fall," read like a mission statement for a career built on exactly that foundation. The diagnosis did more than reveal a deeply personal struggle. It brought an often overlooked national issue into sharper focus, forcing many families to confront a reality they know all too well. Alzheimer's disease affects millions of Americans, yet countless questions remain about its causes, treatments, and the support available to those living with it. For John Ritter's family, this journey became about more than navigating a devastating diagnosis. It became an opportunity to shine a light on the gaps that continue to exist in research, care, and public awareness. What stood out most was Ritter's determination to ensure that this chapter would not be defined by despair. Instead, he saw it as a chance to use his voice, his influence, and every remaining opportunity to advocate for better understanding, stronger resources, and meaningful policy changes for families facing the same battle. But as his mission gained momentum, another question quietly emerged. What would happen next? And how would history remember the impact he left behind? Stay until the very end, because his legacy may be even more remarkable than the story itself. What comes next, and the legacy he leaves behind. Bill Ritter's departure from the anchor desk does not mark the end of his work. He made that clear during his final broadcast and in the conversations that followed. He intends to remain at ABC7, mentoring younger journalists and helping the station expand its coverage of Alzheimer's disease and related conditions. That commitment reflects a man who has not yet finished doing the work he believes needs to be done, even as his personal circumstances have fundamentally changed. The coverage he is committed to pursuing matters on a scale beyond his own story. Alzheimer's disease affects more than 6 million Americans, and that number continues to grow as the population ages. The costs of care and treatment remain out of reach for millions of families, and the gap between what research has accomplished and what a cure would require remains significant. Ritter has spoken directly about wanting to explore how this country might begin to change that, addressing the human cost, the financial burden, and the policy failures that leave patients and caregivers without adequate support. His personal connection to the disease gives that reporting a dimension that institutional coverage rarely achieves. A journalist who has watched a parent lose their life to Alzheimer's and who now carries the diagnosis himself brings a perspective that no press briefing or policy paper can replicate. What he chooses to report on and how he chooses to report it will likely carry the same commitment to honesty that defined his decades behind the anchor desk. The legacy he leaves in New York journalism is substantial and specific. He arrived at WABC as a journalist with a track record of serious investigative work and never traded that identity for the comfort of a presenter role. Over 28 years at the station, he covered events that defined the city and the country, held the trust of millions of viewers across New York and New Jersey, and maintained a standard of professional conduct that younger journalists described as a daily model for what the work should look like. His career total of 7 Emmy Awards, 4 from his San Diego years, and additional recognition from his time at WABC reflects a body of work that prioritized impact over attention. The SeaWorld investigation in 1987. The stock fraud case in 1989. The Los Angeles riots coverage. The decades of nightly reporting in the largest media market in the country. Those are not the achievements of someone who chose television for its visibility. They are the record of someone who chose journalism because the work itself mattered. Ritter's net worth is estimated at between $1 and $3 million, a reflection of a career built on craft rather than celebrity. In a media landscape where those two things do not always travel together, his value to the institutions he worked for and the audiences who relied on him never needed inflation. What remains after a career like his is harder to quantify than awards or audience numbers. It lives in the viewers who trusted the 6 p.m. news because his face was on it. It lives in the younger journalists who learned from watching him approach a story without agenda and deliver it without performance. It lives in a city that knew, on some level, that the person sitting behind the desk actually cared whether the information being delivered was true. Alzheimer's disease has no cure. That reality shapes everything about Ritter's next chapter, and he has not flinched from acknowledging it. But his response to the diagnosis, turning it into a platform for journalism that might help others, is consistent with every choice he has made across a 50-year career in newsrooms from San Diego to Los Angeles to New York. The anchor desk is behind him. The work, in a form that only he could bring to it, continues. Thanks for watching. If this story moved you, hit the like button and subscribe so you never miss a video. Drop a comment below and tell us what Bill Ritter's work meant to you, and share this with someone who grew up watching eyewitness news.